domain, and they intended to destroy those intruders. They cared nothing for intent or to try and reason. There were 2 males and a female, the horse bodies tall and heavily muscled, as were the human bodies. Each wore leather armor, intricately carved vests that left the armors bare except for the bracers. The ears were large and pointed, the noses and faces flat. Long hair that was braided fell down their shoulders and back. The female was blonde. Both males had black hair. Each wore a pointed leather helm. The armor was painted in greens and reds. Strapped across their backs were large, 2-handed swords. Moving at a gallop, the centaurs were upon the party almost as soon as they had seen the charging creatures. Roxhard was in the rear and took the brunt. He avoided the spear, but not the centaur. The force of the impact slammed Roxhard and sent him tumbling. The leg of the centaur buckled from hitting the stone that was the dwarf. He fell hard, the force and speed sending the centaur into a roll. The second centaur, the female, pulled up short, stabbing her spear down toward Lee, who was able to move out of the way. The centaur hadn't been expecting Angus, who slammed into her legs from the side. She stumbled but stayed upright, looking around for the cow who was running to the side. Paul moved aside, barely as the last centaur stopped in front of him and stabbed out with the spear. He got clipped as he tried to turn, his own spear knocked from his hand. Paul cursed and rolled as the centaur reared up to attack with its front hooves. Moving to the side, out of the reach of the centaurs, Sabine started casting Hexfold. The casting finished, a bolt of purple energy streaking from her outstretched hand. It shot across the grasslands and struck the centaur facing off against Lee. Hexbolt was a curse, causing the target to lose dexterity, attack speed, and attack power by sending waves of energy through the body as the target tried to move. It could be cast on multiple targets, but sharing the power of the curse across the targets. At Sabine's low level, the bolt wasn't that strong, but it was enough. The female centaur cried out in pain, purple bolts of energy cascading around her body, spiraling out from where the bolt had hit her in the chest. She reared up, trying to move, but the bolts constricted. She shook, unable to do anything. Angus slammed into her again, and the centaur stumbled, falling to the ground hard. Lee pointed her staff at the prone centaur, enchanted. Her splinter storm sent dozens of small splinters of wood shooting out from the end of the staff, slamming into the centaur, who screamed as each little bit of wood cut into his skin. Each splinter was small, alone not that painful, but dozens together was very painful. Blood started leaking down from all the small wounds. Slicing across the centaur's legs with his sword, Hall managed to get clear as the centaur tried to kick out with the wounded leg. It hobbled around, putting distance between itself and Hall, awkward on just 3 legs. The hurt leg, dropping blood, was curled up and held off the ground. The long spear still gave the centaur reach, and it tried to stab at Hall, quickly jabbing back and forth to keep Hall moving and off balance. With a screech, Pike darted out of the sky, leading with his razor-sharp talons. The centaur saw the dragonhawk coming in, raising his arm to ward off the bird, to keep the claws away from his eyes. Talons cut into the flesh of the arm, blood dripping to the ground. The centaur growled in pain, trying to bat at Pike with the spear. Hall rolled to the ground, coming up under the centaur. He stabbed up with his sword, pulling it as he jumped out to the side. The centaur cried out in pain, dropping its spear and falling hard to the ground. Hall just managed to get out of the way as the heavy body landed. Standing up quickly, he turned around and flipped his sword so it was point down. He drove the sword into the centaur's back, below the neck. The centaur gave one final groan and lay still. Roxhard struggled up, his head hurt, the world spinning. The force of the centaur had sent him flying, landing on his back and rolling another 10 feet or so before landing on his head. He didn't think anything was broken, but his whole body hurt. He saw his axe 5 feet away where he had dropped it and tried to walk toward it. A shadow about 10 feet away stood up from the grass of the plains. The centaur was unsteady on its 4 feet. It took a step toward Roxhard, dropping the spear. A hand reached over the shoulder and drew the huge blade. The hilt was easily 3 of Roxhard's hands long, just barely enough for the centaur's 2. It was plain, no ornamentation. The blade was easily 6 feet long, thin at the bottom and thicker at the top. The back edge curved inward. It looked sharp and dangerous. His axe lay between them, almost midway. It would be a race to see who got to it first, Roxhard or the centaur. Only one of them was armed, so Roxhard knew he had to get to it first. But he also knew the centaur was faster. It would be no contest. He was not getting his axe. He wasn't even going to try. But the centaur didn't know that. He feigned like he was going to go for the weapon. The centaur took the bait and charged, sword ready to swing. Roxhard did not move. Already swinging, the centaur's blade cut through the air. It went off balance, the expected resistance to the strength of the swing not there. Activating Battle Rush, Roxhard charged at the off-balance centaur. He slammed into the horse body, knocking the front legs out. The centaur grunted, falling to the ground again. Roxhard heard the snap of bones breaking. The legs were up in the air, the dwarf getting tangled in them. He fell on top of the centaur, sliding off and rolling on the ground. He had a leg trapped between his body and arm, and he pulled, twisting so it rolled under him. He heard a satisfying crack and cry from the centaur. Trying to stand, he felt a slam in his back, knocking him back down. The centaur kicked out with its rear legs, catching Roxhard hard. The female centaur tried to stand up, the line of purple energy striking her in the shoulder. She fell again, the black wetness spreading. She tried to stand, struggling as the purple crackling energy shocked her limbs. Twisting her head out of the way, she screamed as more splinters embedded themselves in her side, more of her blood falling to the ground. A strange noise, like the beating of wings, made her look up to see a feathered and scaled bird with a long tail hovering in front of her face. The bird's mouth opened, it screeched, and a bolt of lightning slammed into her face. Smoke rose from the blackened ruin of the centaur's face, the lifeless body falling to the ground and not rising. Feeling each of the legs kicking against him, Roxhard crawled away from the centaur. It tried to twist, to rise, but the front legs were broken, the angle awkward. Roxhard was glad of the bad angle as it kept the rear legs from hitting him with full force. But he was still bruised and battered. Out of kicking range, he stood up, looking around for his axe. "Pier," Paul said from the side. Turning, he saw the half-elf skirmisher holding his axe, a bloody sword in his other hand. He tossed the axe and Roxhard caught it. He gripped the handle with 2 hands, walking around to the rear of the centaur. The eyes followed him, filled with anger and hate, lips curled back in a growl. Standing behind the head, where the centaur could not see him, Roxhard raised the axe. The body of the horse thrashed as the centaur tried to lift himself up with his legs. The axe came down, and the body moved no more. Slain, Blood Cry Patroller, plus 30 experience. Slain, Blood Cry Patroller, plus 10 experience. Skill gain, Small Blades rank 2, plus 0.3. Light Armor rank 2, plus 0.1. Paul glanced at the prompt, surprised at the extra 10 experience. From Pike's assist to the women? With a shrug, not really caring, just happy that he got the extra experience, he mentally closed the prompts. He had always kept the combat prompts hidden. The constant stream of damage taken and dealt along with the skill gain and experience notifications were distracting during the game. It was no different now. Even pulling the monster's stat bars was distracting. He didn't need to see their health going down. He was too busy making it go down. He knew he had to do a better job of tracking his gains in stats, skills, and experience. There had always been a little downtime after a fight to do that, but now there didn't seem to be that kind of extra time. Now they were constantly moving. Even when stopping at night, there didn't seem to be time to do all the character maintenance that he needed to do, and there was a lot he needed to do. "Everyone okay?" he asked. The whole fight had only taken a minute, maybe two. Roxhard was holding his head, looking a little unsteady. The women indicated they were fine. Lee walked over to Roxhard, the only one wounded, and cast Nature's Touch. The spell healed the health he was down, but could do nothing for the vitality loss or the shaky head.
"Got a concussion debuff," he muttered. 5 minutes.
Paul nodded. A kick in the head by a centaur would do that. The concussion debuff caused a loss of vitality, agility, and intelligence for a time. Leaning down, Paul ran his fingers over the blade of a centaur's sword. The weapon was well crafted, expertly made. Plain steel, unadorned hilt. A functional but well cared for weapon. It was also huge, much bigger than Hall could easily handle. Roxhard could lift it, but it was just too big physically for the dwarf. Checking his inventory to see if he could bring one of the swords back to sell, he found that he was getting pretty close to full. They had the extra travel packs, but something like the sword would have to go into the magical pouch so the weight wouldn't encumber his movements. Each character could only carry so much weight. The coins took up one slot for all of them, and the bag automatically sorted for him. Each type of herb and skin he had been collecting was a slot as well, and those took up most of the space. He had put the potion holder on his belt, which freed up some space in the inventory, but not enough. There were still some items left in the goblin stash. They had sold as much as they could at Riverside, but still had more to sell. It all amounted to not enough space. He looked down at the heavy sword, trying to remember how much a shopkeep would buy the weapon for. He didn't think it was much, not enough to make it worth carrying all the way to Land's Edge Port. He wanted to make sure there was plenty of space for whatever this treasure map led to, and they were weeks away from the city, and there were no towns or villages along the way that he knew of. The sword would have to stay, same with the spears. He badly wanted to replace his, but the centaurs were too long. They were pike length for a human, not worth taking. He started the gruesome job of searching the bodies for anything worth taking. The game mechanic of doing it for the player was so much easier, he thought as he tried to move one of the heavy bodies to get at what looked like a belt pouch. He tried not to get any of the dried blood on him and just managed to get the body moved enough to grab the pouch. Inside he found some herbs, green root and purple thistle, along with some jerky. There was nothing else of value. The other centaurs were the same, nothing of value. "I miss humanoid mobs always dropping coin," he said, adding a few items to his bag and tossing the centaur's pouch. "Let's get out of here." The next 5 days passed relatively uneventfully. Paul had Pike fly a circular pattern, keeping watch in all directions. They encountered no more patrols, the Dragonhawk spotting 2 villages in the distance that they were able to avoid. He thought one to be a centaur village based on the style of the tents, round, with sides, and a canvas cap held up in the middle by a pole. The other could have been Borin, but he wasn't sure. There were goblins and others living in the plains. It may have been uneventful, but it was cold. They didn't risk a fire any of the days they were in the open plains. The chance of any of the inhabitants seeing it was too great. They sheltered in groves of trees when possible, at rock outcroppings, and for 2 miserable nights they had to camp in the open with no break from the constant wind. Each of those nights their vitality took a small hit. The land started rising as they reached the foothills. The mountains had been coming closer, getting larger and larger with each hour. Now the mountains were immense walls of stone,